And Deputy, when you arrived at that location, can you describe what was going on and who was there and what you did?
On scene were Dalton Fire and ProMed at that time, and Deputy Kennard was also on scene. I was called there because it originally came out as a hit-and-run accident. So when I got there, I started to survey the scene.
Okay. And of your surveying of the scene, what, if anything, did you observe?
I observed on the east side of the road a pile of items, some headphones, sunglasses, and then in the southbound lane of automobile, I noticed a .22 shell casing.
Now, I have on the screen here, sir, Exhibit 42, which is a photograph, a close-up photograph. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes.
And what are we looking at in this photograph?
Sunglasses, a cell phone holder, and earbuds, and then a cell phone.
Okay. And backing up one exhibit to Exhibit 41, you described its location. Is that about where you saw it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you also talked about observing a .22 shell casing in Exhibit 43. Does that exhibit mark that piece of evidence?
Yes. Yes.
And where exactly, sir?
If you look at the yellow circle up at the very top of the picture, right there.
Okay. At some point in time, Deputy Foster, did it become apparent to you, or were your, let me ask it to you this way, were your services as kind of the accident reconstructionist needed?
No.
Why is that?
Well, when I found the .22 shell casing and examined Miss Bletch with the medical examiner, we found several bullet wounds in her head.
All right. Let's talk about that in a second. I'm going to show you what has been marked as People's Exhibit 46. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What are we looking at in this photograph?
A photograph of Bletch's head.
Okay. And what's being measured?
A bullet wound.
And maybe you could point out to the jury, there should be a stick there, pointy stick.
Oh, yeah.
On the screen behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Where that bullet wound is being measured.
Right here.
Okay. Was that the only wound that you and the medical examiner investigator discovered?
No, sir.
Showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 48. What are we looking at in this photograph?
Another bullet wound.
And could you point that out again to the jury, please? Okay. Based on those observations, did the investigation, I guess, turn in a different direction?
Yes.
What was that?
I had dispatch notify our detective bureau and Detective Lieutenant Christensen.
Now, you had indicated, and I think you said this in your answer, but you had indicated that the shell casing was what caliber?
.22.
And how did you make that determination?
I've shot .22 rifles and pistols for years.
Okay. Based on your own personal experience?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 46, is that a fair and accurate depiction of how you saw Ms. Bletch's head in that particular wound?
Yes, sir.
And similar question to People's Exhibit 47
Yes, sir.
and 48.
Yes, sir.
Outside of that, Deputy Foster, did you do any other part of this investigation?
Yes.
What was that?
I did some follow-up with some residents in the neighborhood, and I also conducted a traffic stop on a vehicle Mr. Willis was driving.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that for just a second. This is obviously fast forward a couple of years.
Yes, sir.
This is May of 2016.
Yes.
And are you, obviously you were working in conjunction with who? In that particular case?
Detective Matt Schultz and Detective Levine.
And is it typical then for detectives to, I guess, use the services of a uniformed patrol car in those situations?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because they wanted a traffic stop conducted on the vehicle, and they wanted a fully marked car to do that.
All right. And in fact, were you directed to the particular vehicle you were supposed to stop?
Yes, sir.
And did you in fact stop that vehicle?
I did.
Showing you real quick what's been marked as, well, let's go down. This is People's Exhibit 76. Does that look familiar?
Yes.
Is that the vehicle that you made the traffic stop on?
Yes.
And when you made that traffic stop, how many occupants were in the vehicle?
One.
The driver?
Yes, sir.
Anybody else?
No.
And were you able to identify the driver of that vehicle?
I did.
And I know you already did, but I'm going to ask you again. Who was that?
Jeffrey Willis.
And the person that was driving that vehicle, is that person in court today?
Yes.
Could you point him out, describe what he's wearing, please?
Wearing a blue suit and a blue tie.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that the defendant, or excuse me, the witness identified the defendant. You will. Your Honor, based on Deputy Foster's testimony, I move to admit Peoples 46, 47, and 48.
Objection. Received.
I have no further questions.
Deputy Foster, good morning.
Good morning.
You put my client over in May 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
And do you know if the vehicle was seized at that time?
Yes, it was.
Do you know who drove? I assume someone drove the vehicle to a secure location.
It was towed.
It was towed. Do you know who towed it?
I don't recall what tow company it was.
All right. Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Okay. You may stand down.
People of the state of Michigan call Dr. Robert Rood to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please have a seat. Say your name for the record.
Robert Sidney Rood.
Give me 1 second, Doctor. Good morning, Dr. Root.
Good morning.
I'm going to hand you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 148. can read my own handwriting. What is that, sir?
That's my curriculum vitae.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about that. How are you educated, sir?
My undergraduate degree in chemistry is at Michigan State.
Excuse me, gentlemen. We are prepared to stipulate to the doctor's qualification.
Oh.
That will speed things along.
Fair enough. Well, let me ask you one question, and I will agree to the stipulation. Let's fast forward to where your practice or your knowledge is.
Okay. I did a diabetes and endocrine fellowship at the Joslin Clinic in Boston, which is a Harvard program. And so I am a diabetologist, which means I specialize in the treatment of diabetes.
Okay. I'll agree to the stipulation that he's qualified to talk. He's an expert in the area of. Tell me again what your
Diabetology.
diabetology.
You agree with that?
I will, Your Honor.
Right? And you testify as an expert in that field.
And I guess for the record, that the People's Exhibit 148 is that a complete and accurate rendition of your curriculum vitae?
Yes.
I'd move for the omission of 148, Judge.
No objection, Your Honor.
148 is received.
All right. In your area, in your specialty, doctor, do you work with patients who require the use of insulin?
The majority of my patients require insulin, yes.
And could you describe for the jury the purpose of insulin and why folks need it?
Insulin is a hormone that's produced in the pancreas, and it's responsible for taking the sugar that you absorb when you eat a meal to put it inside the cells where it can either be used for fuel or it's stored as an energy source. And so if you don't have insulin, your blood sugars tend to go too high. Just the opposite, if you have too much insulin, your blood sugars tend to go too low.
Now, does the human body require a regulation of that blood sugar level?
Yes, it's finely controlled so that generally your blood sugar will range between 70 and 100 when you're not eating. And that's finely controlled by multiple hormones.
And, for example, if a person's blood sugar goes too high, what are the adverse effects?
When your blood sugar goes too high, depending on how high it goes, the initial symptoms are thirst, increased urination, which can lead to dehydration because of volume loss. If you get into the more like 400 or 500 blood sugars, it affects your brain. You tend to get confused. And you can actually go into a coma. And I've had patients with a blood sugar as high as 1,500. And remember, a normal blood sugar is 70 to 100 fasting.
Now, and conversely, doctor, if a person's blood sugar level goes low, what are the effects to the body?
Well, generally, when your blood sugar starts dropping below 60, some warning signals occur. And these are generated by hormones. There are four what we call counter-regulatory hormones that are trying to raise the blood sugar back up. And it's glucagon, it's growth hormone, it's cortisol, and it's adrenaline. And so as a result of these hormones being secreted when your blood sugar starts to drop, you tend to get shaky, you tend to get sweaty, you tend to get hungry. If the blood sugar continues to fall down into the 40 range or so, people tend to get confused. It affects their vision, it gets blurry. And if it goes much lower than that, they can seize and actually have arrhythmias, which means irregular heartbeat, and actually die.
So, obviously, this insulin, I guess the insulin is very important for our bodies to function.
You have to have it, yes.
And so, as a result, and I don't know how many manufacturers there are, but because of folks' inability to produce it naturally, does it require some folks to have it artificially, injected or inserted in the body?
Yeah. Half of all type 2 diabetics and all type 1, or what we used to call childhood diabetics, require insulin.
Now, are the different methods of what are the different methods that insulin can be, I guess, put into the body?
Okay. The primary way of introducing insulin into the body is with a syringe and a needle. It's injected. We've gotten more sophisticated, and now we have what are called insulin pumps that infuse it slowly, and that's kind of controlled by a computer system. It can also be administered intravenously, which makes it work much faster, and that's only done in a hospital setting. It can also be given intramuscularly, which is into the muscle, where most insulin injections are given subcutaneous. It's in the tissue right under the skin, the fatty tissue, where it's absorbed.
Now, is there a requirement on how insulin should be properly stored?
Okay, insulin is a protein, and it is sensitive to things like light. Heat is the major one, and agitation. So our patients that are on insulin, the insulin that they're not using, it's always stored in refrigeration. Insulin has to be refrigerated. And if the insulin gets too warm, the protein agglutinates and it no longer functions. Same thing can happen if you freeze the insulin. If you put it too close to the freezer as opposed to the regular refrigerator, it gets too cold and it inactivates the protein, and so it doesn't function well. So insulin that's not being used should be stored in a refrigerator. Your insulin that you're using on a daily basis can be kept at room temperature, and we say 85 degrees or less. And how long it can be exposed to room temperature depends on the insulins. But most insulins, once you start using it, for 28 days it can be kept at room temperature. After that, it needs to be thrown away.
Now, as a result, well, let me ask you this, as the question on proper storage. So obviously, refrigeration preferred, room temperature is okay, correct?
Yes.
What about storing it in a motor vehicle?
Well, one of the concerns about storing any insulin in a motor vehicle is you don't have any control of the temperature. And especially in the summer, it's been documented that the inside of a car can get into 160, 180 degrees, and that would cook the insulin, so it would not be effective.
Okay. So essentially, if I understood your testimony right, anything above 85, that vial isn't going to be worth much, and it'll be essentially worthless in a short period of time.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about, are there certain areas of the body that affect how quick the insulin will react?
Yes, there are. We talk about 4 major areas for injection. The fastest absorption of insulin is actually through the abdomen. The second fastest is in the arms, the deltoids. And then in sequential line, buttocks or thighs are a little bit slower, where buttocks are slower, and the slowest is actually the thigh. But there are other things besides location that have an effect, and that is if you do inject into the thigh, even though it's the slowest absorbing, if you go out and run or walk a lot, you're going to increase blood flow, and it's going to increase the absorption. So in addition to sight, there are other things like temperature that will have an effect. For example, if you take insulin and go into a hot tub, the insulin will be absorbed faster because the increased blood flow increases the absorption.
So if you're engaged in any activity or any action that increases the blood flow or the heart's pumping faster, that besides the site itself, that will increase or speed up the process.
Yes, and that's most pronounced though in the arms and in the legs.
Okay. Now let's talk about insulin being given to somebody who's a non-diabetic. So someone who does not need to have the synthetic, if you will. What is the ultimate effect on that individual?
Well, it actually depends on the amount that's given. I imagine if you gave a small amount, less than maybe 5 units of insulin to a non-diabetic, their counter-regulatory hormones and the fact that when they feel that they're driven to eat, they would be able to take care of it. But if you give a large amount of insulin, you're going to overwhelm these counter-regulatory hormones, and you're going to see the fall in the blood sugar.
And as a result of that, does that have the capability of rendering somebody to incapacitate somebody?
Yes, it can. And the reason is the brain only uses sugar as a fuel. And so if you drop your blood sugar too low, the brain starts shorting out, and that's where you can go into a coma.
And so, and how long, let's say, how long would something like that last on average?
It depends on the kind of insulin. We basically have two major forms of insulin. We have fast-acting insulins, and there's 3 of those. And then we have now about 4 of the longer-actings. And they work a little differently. The short-acting insulins are quickly absorbed. Usually within 15 minutes of injection, it's starting to work. The peak effect is in about an hour, and it lasts about 4 to 5 hours. If you take one of the long-acting insulins, they take about 2 hours after you inject them to really get much effect. And it's a much smoother, lower dose. So if you want to impair somebody, you have to use fast-acting insulin.
And do you recall the names of the fact?
The fast-acting insulins are Humalog, Novolog, and Apidra.
Okay. Now, does a person's body type or weight make a difference in how quickly insulin will work?
Yes, the thinner you are, the better your absorption. If you tend to be overweight, significantly overweight, all that fat makes you insulin resistant. So the insulin doesn't seem to work as well. And that's one of our problems with type 2 diabetes. Most of them are overweight. And because they're overweight, they take large amounts of insulin. The body normally puts out about 30, 40 of insulin. But we have some of our type 2s, especially our overweight ones, on 150, 200 units of insulin a day. And the record in my practice has been 5,000 units in a day. That was an ideal situation.
Now, I want, as I can bring this back up here, there we go. I'd like you to take a look at, I'm going to show you a couple of things here, Doctor. This photograph right here.
Okay. There's a vial of Humalog insulin. That's one of the fast-acting insulins. And then there are syringes. And those are 1 cc syringes, which means it holds, the one looks like it's full at 100 units of insulin. Well, I assume it's insulin. It's got 100 units of something in it.
Okay. Now, I'm going to show you, this is one of the needles that's inside.
Okay, that one's only 50.
Right, and they're all the same. So
Okay.
I know you can't really see the numbers on this, so I wanted to show you. So the capacity of these needles is what?
50 units.
And again, for a non-diabetic person, what does 50 units mean if that's fully injected into somebody?
That if you don't allow them to eat, that's probably going to give them a severe glycemic reaction.
Enough to incapacitate them?
Yes.
Now, in your opinion, doctor, would it be a safe place to store insulin in a Sentry safe lockbox in a vehicle for it to be effective?
No.
The other thing I want to show you is People's Exhibit 19. And it's on the screen in front of you, doctor, so you don't have to strain. Right here.
Oh,
Right here. Does that diagram look at all familiar to you?
yeah, that's the injection sites.
Is that, and I don't know, sir, if you, obviously, if a patient comes in and it's a new patient that's unfamiliar with the process, do you provide any kind of literature or training, or how does that work?
We normally have them see an educator, and they learn about what insulin can do, where to inject it. There's a lot of things about the technique of administering insulin.
Okay, so you do provide that, I'll call it training, if you will, to folks who are experiencing this for the first time. Is that accurate?
Correct, yes.
Just give me 1 second here, Doc. Just on the lines of that training question, has it been your experience or maybe in your practice where if there is a significant other or a spouse that they take part in that training as well?
We would prefer it that way. That doesn't always happen.
Sure, I understand. But certainly, you don't discourage
Oh, no.
that from happening.
We encourage, it's a team disease, and so they don't need to, both the patient and the spouse need to understand the patient themselves might give the injection and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
One moment. Dr. Root, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Fred Johnson. I'd like to ask you a few more questions. You mentioned delivery systems when in direct examination, the delivery system for the insulin into the body, how it gets into the body. And one of the things you mentioned was an insulin pump. Could you describe that in further detail for us and tell the jury what an
An
insulin
insulin
pump?
pump is about the size of a pack of cigarettes, and it holds a reservoir, a couple hundred units of insulin, and basically it administers the insulin on a regular basis. One of the problems with the old injecting insulin is you get these peaks where you inject and it doesn't work for about 15 minute peaks an hour later. Where with an insulin pump, you're giving slow amounts of insulin all the time. That's called the basal insulin. And then when a person eats a meal, they will tell the pump how many carbs they're eating, and the pump will administer insulin to cover that peak.
All right, so part of what the pump does is dependent on the patient receiving the insulin, correct?
Yes.
So if the patient either forgets to or puts in too much information, too many carbs, then that can give the pump an incorrect reading as to how it's supposed to respond. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So given that human beings aren't perfect, I imagine there are occasions where the insulin pump is not a 100% always foolproof mechanism to deliver insulin. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And sometimes there may be an occasion where due to the mechanical error or human error, that the person, despite having the pump, may still need an injection of insulin in a crisis situation.
That is right.
Okay. You mentioned that insulin can incapacitate folks in fact, can all end up in a coma or the heart breaking down, et cetera, et cetera. And my question is, if a person injects another person, if a person injects herself with too much insulin and falls into a coma, how is that person revived? Does it just wear off over time, or is hospitalization necessary?
If it's a diabetic, depending on the amount of insulin that's administered, it somewhat depends on the duration of diabetes. Generally, people with long-term diabetes, those counter-regulatory hormones that I talked about that bring the insulin or bring the glucose, the sugar back up, they're not there.
All right.
So in the type 1, there is no glucagon. There's very little epinephrine. And so the counter-regulatory hormones don't work very well. If they don't wake up, it's kind of like the same thing that happens if you don't get enough oxygen to the brain. After 4 minutes, basically the brain is toast. Same thing can happen with low blood sugar.
Brain is toast, is that a medical term, doctor?
No.
Quite descriptive. Thank you. What about a person who is not a diabetic and is injected with insulin and falls into a coma? What's the course with them? Is hospitalization necessary with them? Is medical care necessary for them, or we just wait it out?
Generally, if they're by themselves and there's no one there to help them, brain damage can occur.
Okay. Okay. All right. But they can come out of it on their own?
Occasionally, people will come out of a low blood sugar on their own, yes.
Okay, but that's not 100% of the time.
Correct.
Okay. I guess the question. If you mentioned that if insulin is stored inappropriately, it becomes ineffective. So what is the effect on a human being of injection with ineffective insulin?
It won't have much effect.
Okay. You mentioned that a lot of things go into the incapacitation that a non-diabetic would suffer if injected with insulin. What type of factors go into that again? What type of factors in terms of determining what the impact is going to be to that person?
Well, first of all, it's the amount of insulin.
Yes, sir.
Number 2, the method with which it's administered.
Okay.
I said IV would be the fastest. Sub-Q, which is the way most insulin is given.
Let's assume injection by one of those needles that Mr. Hilson showed you.
Okay. Well, then, if it's a thin person, they won't have much adipose tissue, subcutaneous tissue. And normally, in those kind of people, they have to pinch it up and then inject in that. Otherwise, because their adipose tissue is so thin, you can inject right into the muscle.
Okay.
And if you do that into the arm or into the leg, you get it right into the muscle, and that's the equivalent of giving the insulin IV.
Okay.
So it works much quicker.
All right. In terms of much quicker, how much time are we talking about?
Well,
So assume that needle's full, and a 105-pound woman.
well, it's going to probably within 4 to 5 minutes, if it's given into the muscle,
Okay.
it's going to have an effect.
All right. So you know what we're used to, right? We're used to the spy flicks where the guy comes up and he stabs it, and the guy falls right out. That's not the kind of effect.
No.
Okay. Let's see. Do you know what AIC is? The initials AIC stands for?
Yes.
What do they stand for, doctor?
That stands for glycosylated hemoglobin. It's a blood test that it's basically how we keep an eye on our diabetic patients. And basically, it's the equivalent of checking a blood sugar every hour, 24 hours a day, for a total of 3 months. And then we average it all together. And it's because when your blood sugar is elevated in the bloodstream, it looks to your red cells. And since the red cells only last 120 days, once the red cell dies, it's gone. So by measuring this A1C, we can find out how well the blood sugars are controlled. So in a normal person, the A1C should be under 6. In a diabetic, our goal is to have the A1C under 7, because there's good data that's now shown that if we keep it under 7%, we're going to prevent the major complications of diabetes, which are going blind, kidney failure, heart attack, and losing your leg. So that's a thing we use to monitor it. And I've been around so long that the A1C was not originally there. And the only way we could find out if a person was doing their blood sugars appropriately was when they came to the office, we checked their urine for sugar, we checked their fasting blood sugar. But this test looks back 3 months.
Okay. And what is the problem that occurs if a person has a high AIC?
High A1C means poor control, so they're at much higher risk for complications.
Okay. And is it unusual for a person on the pump to also have syringes available in case of emergency or some other circumstance?
Yeah, if the pump dies, then you have to use a syringe to administer insulin. One of the problems with the insulin pump is it's administering small amounts of insulin all the time, like 1 unit of insulin per hour. And so when that stops, it's rapidly gone and your blood sugars start going up. Whereas in the old days, when we had the long-acting insulin, an injection of that lasts anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. And so, even if you don't take any fast-acting insulin, you still have some of that long-acting insulin around.
All right. Thank you, doctor. I don't have any further questions.
Judge, I don't have any further questions.
Thank you. You may stand down. Next.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people of the state of Michigan call Brian Harris to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You said it, state your name for the record.
Brian Harris.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you, well, let me ask you this. How long have you been in law enforcement?
30 years.
And of those 30, how long were you with the Muskegon County Sheriff's Department?
28 years.
And in that capacity of your 28 years, what duties did you hold?
Started working in the jail. I was a subpoena server, accident reconstructionist, road patrol deputy, and detective.
All right. And how many years in the Detective Bureau?
Between 7 and 8.
And your primary, or I guess one of your primary duties in the Detective Bureau was what, sir?
I was the evidence officer.
Now, you have since retired.
That's true.
When did you retire from the Sheriff's Department?
2 years ago.
And but you're still working in law enforcement, is that correct?
Correct.
Where are you working now?
Norton Shores Police Department.
And I know, because I call you Mr. Harris. I don't know if it's Officer Harris now or just Mr. Harris.
Mr. Harris is fine.
Okay, fair enough. And how long have you been with the Norton Shores Police Department?
2 years.
Working in what capacity?
I take care of their evidence room as well.
Okay. Back on June 29th of 2014, were you still employed with the Sheriff's Department?
Correct.
And in the Detective Bureau?
I was.
And as their evidence person?
Yes.
All right. Now, do you recall being dispatched to the scene on Automobile Road
Yes.
on that date, June
Yes.
29th, 2014?
I got a phone call. It was after hours for us.
Okay. You arrived out there, sir, and what did you do?
Took some photographs and collected some evidence at the scene.
Okay. And in particular, do you recall? Bounce one photograph up here. People's Exhibit 42. Do you recall that being at the scene?
Yes.
And in fact, is that something that you collected?
Yes.
Now, also showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 40. Go back. We'll go to 43 first. Sorry. 43. The circles indicate what?
There was some blood pools there.
All right. Now, I'm assuming by the time you arrived, Ms. Fletch's body had been removed from the scene.
She was actually in the ambulance, but off the ground, yes.
I'm sorry, good answer to a bad question.
Thank you.
Now, the other circle depicted in this photograph is what?
I believe both of those are the blood spots. I can't tell from that photograph.
Another good answer to a bad question. The circle in the far on the roadway, in the middle of the picture.
Oh, yes, I see that now. There's a shell casing there.
All right.
It's very hard to see in this.
No, I get it.
computer
I
picture.
apologize. 44 is a close-up view of that.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And, sir, did you also, were you responsible for collecting this?
I did.
Okay. Now, did you do some other investigation of the scene to see if you could collect any other evidence?
I did.
Where did you look?
The road edges and over by where the body had originally been located. And
Okay.
also the sunglasses and cell phone were on the opposite side of the road, so basically searched both roadway edges and the ditches to see if anything else was there.
Okay. All right, let's start with People's Exhibit 49. This is a picture of what?
Those are the blood spots.
Okay, and we're going to get closer to that placard, but that yellow tent, what is that?
It's an evidence marker.
And was that something that you had placed?
Yes.
All right. People's Exhibit 50, is that the same
Yes.
evidence marker?
Evidence placard number 5, yes.
All right, and what was the significance of that placard?
When I was canvassing the area, I discovered another shell casing there.
Now, and again, we'll look at Exhibit 51. Same placard?
Yep, just a close-up so you can barely see kind of straight above in the middle, just a couple inches down.
You've got a pointer, I think, at your
Yeah.
turn around.
Right here, I'm trying to move in so you can see in reference to the number 5, the shell casing that I found.
Okay, and as you compare the two locations, the one in the roadway and this particular shell casing, which was closer to the double circles where the blood was?
This one was.
And do you recall, sir, approximately how close that shell casing was?
To the blood spots?
Yes, sir.
Maybe 2.5 feet, 3 feet, somewhere
Okay.
in between 2 and 3 feet.
Now, at some point in time, at this point, when you found this particular shell casing, did you find anything else on that day?
I do not think so.
All right. Did you have an occasion to go back out to the scene? I believe it was the next day.
Yes.
Why?
Better search. We kind of organized a group of detectives to assist with this case, and I went back with Officer or Detective Orison from the City Police Department. We teamed up for the day to go up and see if we could find any additional evidence.
And were you able to find additional evidence?
Yes, we found another shell case.
All right. Showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 52. What is this?
It's evidence placards. This is the number 6, and then this is just an arrow pointing where the bullet is. So from a farther angle, you can see what I'm kind of trying to emphasize.
Bottom of the picture there, you see that yellow spray paint.
Yes.
And again, that's what is that?
That's one of the blood spot markings.
All right, so we're still in the area of the blood spot. I guess behind the blood spot.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And just so that you clear up any confusion, you had already removed, or let me ask you this, did you remove the the shell casing that you had labeled number 5 prior to that discovery?
Yes.
So we're not talking about the same shell casing?
No.
This is different. People's Exhibit 53, what is this?
That's a close-up of number 6.
So in total, how many shell casings were recovered from the scene?
3.
And were they of the same caliber, different caliber?
Same caliber,
Which was what?
a 22.
And do you know, or did you even look at whether or not they were of the same manufacturer?
Yes, they were.
What was that?
CCI.
Okay. Detective, so used to that. Mr. Harris, I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 149 and 150. What do you have in your hands there, sir?
These are the shell casings that were recovered that day and the next day.
The ones that we've shown in the pictures.
Correct.
Okay.
They're listed as C, but that's what's the stamp on the shell casing, but it's CCI is the company.
Gotcha. Now, there was an autopsy performed in this particular investigation. Is that correct on Ms. Fletch?
That's correct.
And was there evidence that was seized as a result of that autopsy?
Correct.
All right. Give me 1 second. I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 151.
Okay.
What is that, sir?
It's the autopsy report.
And, Your Honor, it's my understanding that defense counsel and I are going to stipulate to its admission.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's number what?
151.
Correct. Received.
That autopsy report is pertaining to the autopsy that was done on Rebecca Bletch. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Let's talk about, in that report, the wounds and what was recovered. First and foremost, this is on page 4.
Okay.
We're talking about gunshot wounds. In this particular photograph, what are we looking at?
Bullet projectile fragments
And these were collected where?
at the autopsy by Dr. Shattuck.
All right. Now, it says on the label there that these were fragments from Miss Bletch's hair. Is that indicated in the autopsy report?
It is.
And that's in conjunction with which of the wounds? Her label.
Actually, these I think are from B.
Wound B.
Yes.
Now, prior to that, she did make a reference to a wound A. Is that correct?
That's true.
And that's that. And I'm not going to ask you to go in detail about where it is and whatnot, but she has identified a wound A and a wound B
Correct.
in the same, I guess, same paragraph, if you will, or same
Yes.
section. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Now, and if I understand correctly, those fragments were collected as a result of her work on wound A and wound B.
Correct.
All right. Next,
Next exhibit is People's Exhibit 55.
And that indicates being collected where?
The left posterior scalp.
All right. And in Dr. Shattuck's report, is that associated with another wound location?
This is actually wound A, I think.
Wound A?
Yes.
Okay. And, okay.
Yeah,
And this
left
is-
posterior scalp is A.
Yep. And again, this was collected by the doctor at the autopsy.
Yeah, Dr. Shattuck.
All right. I guess her label. 56.
Okay.
People's Exhibit 56.
This particular projectile, again, is this one that was collected at the autopsy?
It is.
And again, does Dr. Shattuck's report indicate that being associated with a wound?
Yes, wound C.
Wound C. Okay. And found, if the notation is correct, and it is in conjunction with the report, where?
In the brain.
In the brain.
Yeah, brain fragments projectile.
All right.
Finally, People's Exhibit 57.
This is this another fragment that was recovered by Dr. Shattuck during the autopsy?
It is.
And this is associated with which wound?
This is associated with wound D.
D as in dog?
Yes.
All right. So if I understand it correctly, the forensic pathologist, Dr. Shattuck, was able to discover 4 different wounds on the head of Miss Bletch.
That's how it was explained to me, yes.
Okay. And all these fragments that were recovered by the doctor, did that end up in your hands at some point in time? To be collected as evidence?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm handing you what has been marked as People's Exhibit 152 and 153. You recognize those packages?
Yes.
And what do they contain?
Bullet fragments, projectile fragments.
The ones that you just got finished describing with the photographs.
That's correct.
Okay. Last, but certainly not least, this is People's Exhibit 58.
58?
58. Yep, sorry, 58. This is what, Mr. Harris?
Yes.
What are we looking at in this photograph?
It's just a diagram from the autopsy report.
Basically where the locations of the various wounds?
Yes.
And I think they're labeled in conjunction with the autopsy report, is that correct?
Correct.
A, B, C, and D?
Correct. A, B, C, D.
All right. And then there's a side view, I think, on the left where it's showing C and D?
Correct.
Okay. And is that diagram consistent with your review of how Dr. Sheddick described the locations?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move for the admission of 49 to 58. Those are the photographs and the diagram, I guess.
49 through 58?
Correct. Those are the photographs we just went through.
I don't have an objection for that.
They'll be received.
We've already admitted to the autopsy. I would also move to admit exhibits 152 and 153, which are the bullet fragments described and testified to by Mr. Harris.
Received.
Just check my notes here.
I guess the only other question that I forgot to ask you, and I want to go back to, this is exhibit 52, the third and final shell casing that you recovered. Do you recall, and we can kind of see it, but the distance between the two blood stains and that particular shell casing,
Yes.
is it, I mean, in general sense,
4 to 5 feet.
similar? Is that similar distance or greater distance than the shell casing that was labeled number 5?
Pretty close, maybe another foot to the west.
Okay. So 5 was closer than 6 to the if we're using the blood stains as reference.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge. I have no further questions of Mr. Harris.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You have the autopsy still with you?
I have it right here.
Okay. All right. All right. Do me a favor, would you?
Sure.
Let's see. Let's start on page 414.
Okay. All right.
Okay. On 414, the third paragraph down,
Okay.
it says a deformed projectile fragment is recovered from the scalp, correct?
Yes.
And then next line it says 2 deformed projectile fragments are also recovered from the scalp adjacent to wound B, correct?
Scalp hair.
Scalp hair.
adjacent to.
My apologies. You're correct. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm doing the count here. So I'm talking. There's a total of 3 objects.
From that, yes.
Okay. On page 5 of 14,
Okay.
it says there are 2 deformed projectile fragments, correct? And the second paragraph
Yes.
down, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So that's another 2. So we're up to 5, correct?
Correct.
All right. And on page 6 of 14,
Mhm.
A deformed projectile fragment. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it because it's highlighted, so I go right to it. Go to the second paragraph.
Yep.
Second line, second paragraph is comma of the left skull, and a deformed projectile fragment is recovered. Okay.
That's what it says.
Okay. And so that's one more. So as I count, that's a total of 6. Correct? 6 objects.
Correct.
Okay. Counsel, could you bring up? I guess is the first exhibit. Is it 150? Is it 54? I think it is the first one. That's the first one, Mr. Willis. 54. Okay. And I count 2 there, 2 objects there.
Right.
Correct.
Mhm.
Could you go to 55, Counsel? 1 object there.
Yes.
So we're 3.
Yes.
56 is 2 objects there.
Yes.
Okay, so 5. 57. Is that 57?
Yes.
So there's 2 objects there. So it's a total of 7 by my count. Is that what you got to?
That's what it looks like.
Okay. So, based on the autopsy there, are you able to count a total of 7 objects, but the doctor only found 6 according to autopsy? You know what the 7th is, and or to count why it's in the photographs?
Judge, I guess I'll object to the question. There's nowhere in the doctor's report where she says she found 6 or 7. She classifies it as fragments, plural. And so it's a misleading question, quite frankly. The doctor never says, I find 6 fragments in her report.
I would disagree, Your Honor. We just went through her doctor's report and counted the fragments she said she found, and we came up with 6. That's how we came up with the numbers, not what she said. It's when it was in the report. Now, if there's an additional information in another report, or this report shows what the 7th fragment is, I think Mr. Hibson has a point. But we just counted the number of fragments that are in her report. So I don't think it's misleading at all.
Okay, go ahead. You can answer the question.
Did you, in reading the report or your information, can you explain why there's 7 objects and we've only been able to count 6 in the report?
No, I don't know. I didn't prepare the report.
No, you're just reporting what you read, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're reading the report, correct?
Yes.
And you're seeing what we're seeing.
Yes.
I'll do that several times through the course of this trial. So you, other than what you see what we see.
I see. This is the photograph that you're questioning because it just lists the deformed projectile fragment recovered from the soft tissue of the left temporalis muscle. But this shows that plus a small fragment. It's not
Okay.
listed.
Thank you. Poor question. You can't tell by looking at those pictures what they're made of, what the objects are made of.
No.
Okay. I think it's Exhibit 12. Counsel, can we bring that up? I think it's the shell casing. Sure. You found mine? Or maybe it's... Yes. Could you zoom in on that, please? Okay. That's the best we can do? All right. Can you see that,
I can't.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Okay. All right. You've been a police officer. You have been for, what, 30 years?
Yes, sir.
And during the course of your experience as a police officer, I imagine you've seen ammunition before.
Correct.
Correct? And looking at that particular photograph of that particular piece of ammunition, I assume that's what you see. What do you see? Matter of fact, what do you see?
I assume that's a .22 caliber live round of ammunition.
Okay. Is that bullet in pristine condition in your opinion? Based on what you can see.
No.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions. One moment, please. Mr. Harris, you remember testifying at Ms. Fletcher's preliminary examination?
I do.
Do you recall placing in evidence or requesting placing in evidence a package or packages containing shell casings? Do you recall?
I don't remember what the testimony was other than the same similar to today.
Do you recall how many you offered for placement on that occasion?
No.
Okay. Do you know of any reason why the packaging would change for that material from then to today? In other words, would there be any reason to separate them out and for this purpose as opposed to having them all together for the last?
I do not know. We opened something for you last time. I don't remember if it was these or not, but I wasn't employed at the time after that trial. I wasn't at the Sheriff's Department, so I didn't have access to this. So I can't say about it being opened after the fact.
Thank you. Mr. Harris, thank you.
Well, thank you.
I just, I think I missed. Apologize. I did.
Was the show.
Yep, I missed the introduction of the packages with the shell casing, which was Exhibit 149 and 150. I moved for their admission as well.
May I?
You may.
I think that's what he's done.
I think so too. No objection, counsel.
Thank you. See, you may stand down. Thank you.
Do you need that evidence?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you.
We'll take a 10-minute break.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat. State your name for the record.
Michelle Snotella.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Who do you work for?
Pardon me.
Who do you work for? I'm sorry.
Herman Miller.
And Ms. Nutella, I'm going to ask you just to speak up just a little bit so the jury can hear you.
Okay.
And how long have you worked for Herman Miller?
I've been with Herman Miller 23 years.
Okay, so a long time.
Yes.
And what shift do you work?
I work the first shift.
And how many others work in the same area as you and the same shift?
In my particular work area?
Yes.
About 8 of us.
Now, at some point in time, did you and the defendant work together?
Yes.
And when did that start?
April of 2010, I transferred over there. Maybe around 2010, 11, 12.
Okay. And worked the same shift?
Correct.
And
Third shift.
And again in the same area?
Yes.
And was that employment still going on through April of 2013?
Yes.
Now, what was the defendant's job? What did he do?
He was my material handler.
What does a material handler do?
If I'm working my job and I need product brought to me, I contact my material handler and he brings it and delivers it to me.
Okay. So essentially, it's a person that kind of gophers around to the folks that are working. I don't know, what did you do?
I was a machine operator.
Okay,
Yes.
so working one of the machines at Herman Miller.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at one point in time, ma'am, were you a gun owner?
Yes, I was.
And do you recall what type of gun it was that you purchased?
The P-22 Walter.
I'm going to show you what is People's Exhibit 127. I'll open it up for you even. Remove the tag. Do you recognize that gun?
Yes,
And how do you recognize it?
because that is the gun that I purchased.
Now, do you recall where you purchased it from?
Gary's Guns.
And do you remember about when that gun was purchased?
Oh, I don't know exactly when it was, what date. All the paperwork was missing.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can help you out. All right, I'm going to hand you what is marked as People's Exhibit 154. Have you take a look at that document. Do you recognize it?
Yes,
And what is that?
pardon me.
What document is that? What are we looking at? Or what are you looking at?
I am looking at the day that I purchased the gun, my signature.
Is that I guess what we'll call the purchase permit that you filled out?
Yes,
And did you fill that out at Gary's Guns?
yes.
Now, does it indicate the date of that purchase?
Oh. I have it assigned on May 1st,
Of?
2012.
All right, May 1st, 2012, you purchased this particular firearm. Now, is there anything different about the firearm in that box than when you originally purchased it?
Yes, it is missing the laser attachment.
So, if I understand correctly, when you purchased this firearm, it had a laser, I guess what we're calling a laser sight attached to it?
Yes.
Okay? And that's not in that box?
No, it is not.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 155, and I will let you and the jury know this gun is safe. It's not loaded. In fact, there's not a clip in it. As you look at this gun, does that look familiar?
That is how my gun originally looked when I purchased it.
So it had attached to it this piece right here, this
Correct.
laser sight.
Yes.
Because if we look at this particular firearm, that is missing that piece.
Correct.
Okay. Now, when you purchased it, when you purchased that gun, was the laser sight already affixed to it as it is here?
Yes, it was.
All right. So you didn't have to do that yourself.
Nope.
And I'm assuming then you didn't have to install the batteries or anything like that. It was already good to go.
Good to go.
Okay. Now, when you purchased that gun in May of 2012, May 1st of 2012, you were still working at Herman Miller?
Yes.
Still working third shift?
Yes.
And if I understood your earlier testimony, was the defendant a coworker of yours working the same shift in the same area?
Yes.
Okay. After you purchased that firearm, let me ask you that. Maybe I asked you this. No, I don't think I did. But are you a gun person?
Not really.
Okay. After you purchased that firearm in May of 2012, how many times would you say you shot that?
Maybe, just a couple, maybe 3 times.
At any point in time when you shot that firearm, was it ever missing the laser sight?
No,
Did you ever remove the laser sight at any point in time that you had ownership of this firearm?
no,
After you purchased this gun, were there discussions at all at work, at Herman Miller, about this purchase and what you had purchased?
yes.
Okay. If you recall, in general, what types of discussions were you having about it?
General discussions were, got a gun in. To me, just, my husband bought a gun, got a gun for me, P-22 Walter, yay.
Okay, gotcha.
That was about it.
Not a whole lot to talk about or celebrate, I understand.
No,
Did, in those conversations, was the defendant ever involved in those conversations?
yes,
In your opinion, did the defendant know you had a gun?
yes he did.
Now, was there a particular place in your house that you stored that weapon?
Yes,
Where?
that was in my bedroom closet.
Now, the way that you stored this particular weapon, did you, for lack of a better way to describe it, did you hide it in blankets and boxes, or I guess, how was it stored?
It was stored in a case right up on top of the shelf.
All right.
Nothing over it.
So, is it safe to say, I mean, could you see it if you stood at a certain position in front of your closet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't obstructed at all?
No.
Now, in this same area, did you also have any other, I guess, things of interest? In other words, laundry basket or anything? Did you keep your dirty laundry in the same location?
Yes.
And I don't know if you kept it in the closet, but was it in the, I guess, where did you keep it? And
In the same room, in my bedroom. Yes.
All right. Now, where you live, are you a person that locks your house on a routine basis?
Nope.
And on what occasions would you not lock your house?
When I went out of town for the weekend, when I knew I was going to be gone multiple days, I would lock my house.
Okay. So if you're going to be on vacation or out of town for multiple days, that's when you typically would lock your house.
Yes.
If you were going to work, let's say, on your third shift, would you lock your house?
Nope.
All right. And did you ever have any issues as a result of that?
Never.
All right. Now, can you tell us the last time that you saw that firearm?
Was the weekend of February 22nd and 23rd of 2013.
And why are you so definite about those dates?
Because there was a friend that came into town, and that's when the weapon was taken out of the closet, shown, and then put back in the closet.
Okay. Now, as you sit there today, do you recall any extensive travel that had caused you to lock your house from February of 13 to April of 13?
No.
So you were around town,
Yep.
essentially leaving your house to work and whatever else that you
Yep.
do, but not
Yes.
travel.
Nope.
I want to draw your attention to early March of 2013. Do you recall a time where you observed some snowmobile tracks around your house?
Yes.
Now, was that unusual or a normal occurrence? The snowmobile tracks, that is.
I call it unusual because it only happened one time a year.
Okay. And let me ask you this, that first week of March of 2013, were you working that week?
Yes.
Now, and I don't know when, or if you, I guess if you could let us know when you observed those snowmobile tracks and what did you do?
I observe them in the morning when I come home in the morning. I usually got home about 6 in the morning and seen snowmobile tracks through the snow, down my driveway, around my house, and back out the driveway.
Now, did you have an idea or a suspicion as to who those tracks might belong to?
Yes, I did.
Why? Why did you have that suspicion or idea?
Because Jeff Willis would go snowmobiling and go around my house, and then the next day I would go back into work, or that night, technically, and I'd say, oh, you went out snowmobiling, you were up to the house, and he admitted, yes, yeah, did a ride around your house, and off he went.
So, is it safe to say the defendant knew where you lived?
Yes.
And how close in proximity are you to a snowmobile trail?
Oh. I'm not good at distance.
Okay, well, I tell you what,
Maybe
let me help you out.
200 yards? I don't know.
Let me help you out.
Okay.
I'll pull up this map. You recognize the address associated with that black dot there?
Yes.
How?
That's where I live.
Okay. And what would be what's the closest trail for snowmobiling?
The closest trail is right there.
All right, well, take that stick and point it out for me, please.
My house is here.
Yep.
The snowmobile trail is right here, the Hart Montague Trail, and that's the snowmobile trail.
Okay. Now, from your house, is there, how many ways are there to get in and out with a vehicle?
One way.
And could you point that out, please?
My driveway is right here.
All right.
There's one way in, one way out.
So it's a pretty long driveway.
Yeah.
And if I saw how you maneuvered that stick, your driveway crosses over the snowmobile trail, essentially?
Yes, yes. When I come home from wherever, I have to turn down this small little paved section, cross the snowmobile trail, and then turn down my driveway.
Okay. Is it safe to say that the area where you live there, is it rural? I mean, is it in the sense, are there a lot of things around, like businesses and houses, or is it more open?
No, not, I mean, it's rural, yeah. But not like way, way out in the country, but very isolated in the city.
Okay, gotcha. As it relates to the particular firearm, can you think, as you sit here today, is there any reason why the defendant should have your gun in his possession?
No,
Did you ever give it to him?
no,
Did you sell it to him?
no,
Has, outside of snowmobiling around your house and knowing where you live, has he ever been over for, a social gathering
no,
inside your house?
no,
Did you, socialize with the defendant outside of work at all?
nope,
So he was a coworker, and that's it.
yes.
Okay. Now, I want to direct your attention to the Sunday after Jessica Herring goes missing. So she's taken on April 26th, 2013, which is a Friday. That next Sunday would be April 28th, 2013. Do you recall whether or not you were working that particular night, since you were a third shift?
Yes,
And do you recall whether or not Mr. Willis was working that particular night?
yes.
Now, in your memory of that particular day, do you recall anything unusual about Mr. Willis's appearance?
Yes.
What do you recall?
I recall him having scratch marks on his arms.
Okay. And in fact, did you provide, or let me ask you this, did you ask him about those scratch marks?
Yes.
And what did the defendant tell you about them?
He told me that he had a new puppy, a playful puppy.
And was it the puppy that caused the scratch marks?
Yes.
Did you, at some point thereafter, when asked by investigators, provide a description or a diagram of that?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 156. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes.
Is that the diagram that investigators asked you to kind of fill out for them?
Yes.
And is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
It's safe to say that at the time when you saw that in 2013, when you saw that in 2013, was the defendant even a suspect in the Jessica Herring investigation? All right. Now, the other set of questions I have for you, Ms. Notella, is there's been some testimony in this. There's been some testimony, ma'am, about the discovery of some underwear in a shed on the Willis property. Give me just a second here. Just gonna throw some gloves on. I'm not going to ask you to hold it, but do those two pairs of underwear look familiar to you?
Yes,
How so?
they are mine.
And you recognize them as yours because of the, I guess, the pattern?
The
and-
pattern.
All right. Would these have been articles of clothing you would have had in the bedroom where the gun was at?
Yes.
Can you think of any reason, Ms. Notella, why your two pairs of underwear would be in a shed located on the defendant's property?
There should be no reason they were there.
Did you give them to him?
No,
Did you sell them to him?
no,
Was there ever an occasion where the defendant would make comments to you at work involving your underwear?
yes.
What would he say?
He'd always say, "Can I have a pair of your underwear?" And I would, no.
Okay. So, as you're sitting here today, you never provided the defendant with a pair, or two pairs of that, of your underwear?
No.
All right, give me 1 second here, Mr. Gonzalez. Just a couple more questions and I'll be done. In reference to your gun, did, at any point in time, did you become concerned at all that your gun was missing? In other words, were you the type of person that, always looked and checked every day, every hour?
No.
All right. From the time period of March of 2013, really until the police got involved in 2016, was there any suspicion at all that your gun was missing? In other words, stolen?
Not that it was stolen.
Okay. Explain.
I thought maybe I had misplaced it because whenever I would go out of town and I would lock my doors, I would take my gun out of the closet and I would hide it up in the attic. And each time I would hide it in different locations. So when we came back into town, it wasn't there, and I thought, oh, it must be in a location that I don't remember. So I wasn't sure which location in the attic it was in. I don't fire it often at all, so I wasn't too worried about it. It was up in the attic.
Okay. So in your mind then, if I understand your answer, in your mind, you never felt that
you needed to report a stolen weapon because you just figured you misplaced it.
Yep, yes.
Okay. Leave this up here with you.
All right. Judge, that's all I have. Thank you.
Shalotella, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Fred Johnson, the last time you testified.
Yes,
I'd like to ask you a few more questions, if I may.
sure.
Okay. And you work at Herman Miller, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so you don't testify for a living, correct?
no,
Okay, so sometimes you're a very soft-spoken person, sometimes your voice gets a little soft, so when it does, I'll tap my ear like that, so you know to speak up a little bit for us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. You've known my client since, I think you said 2010, something like that?
yes,
And in that time, you see him sitting in the courtroom here this morning, correct?
yes,
In that time, has he always had beard, mustache, goatee, something like that, as far as you can remember?
Yes.
You ever remember seeing him was clean shaven?
maybe once.
When was that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you what month,
Okay.
no.
Could you tell me what year?
No,
Okay.
I just,
Was it around the time that Miss Herringa went missing?
I could not attest to that.
Okay. You worked with my client, correct? At Herman Miller?
I worked with him,
Yes,
yes.
ma'am.
Yes,
Okay. And during the course of that time, you'd have conversations? For instance, you mentioned about the gun on occasion?
yes,
And having worked those kind of jobs myself, sometimes you have friendships or at least people you have some friendly banter with. Is that correct?
correct.
Do you ever remember my client asking you to purchase the undergarments that we saw this morning? Purchase undergarments from, did he ever ask you to purchase panties?
No,
Okay. Your relationship was, you tell me, how do you characterize your relationship with my client?
friendly, everyday friendly, coworker,
All right,
everyday conversations,
all right. But he knew that you're married,
correct,
and he knew where you lived?
correct,
Okay. And he knows about the eyeball tattoo that you have, correct?
yes,
Okay, and without getting explicit, when you're dressed for work, the eyeball tattoo cannot be seen, is that correct? It's
Correct.
a location that can't be seen.
correct,
But he knows about that as well, correct?
correct.
All right. Back in March 2013, when you saw the snowmobile tracks, were you married at that time? Were you still married?
Yes,
Okay. Did my client know your husband's schedule?
yes,
Do you know when he would be there and when he wouldn't be there?
yes.
Okay. What shift was your husband working on that?
He was working first shift,
Okay. So he was working first shift,
correct,
and you were working what?
third shift,
So first and third shift?
Correct.
So during the course of the day, where would your husband be when he wasn't working? Do you remember where he was back in March 2013 during the course of the day?
during the day.
When he wasn't working, when he got done with work, what did he do?
he-
If you remember.
Like what time of day?
When he's not working.
When he's not working, he would be either in a college class or home.
Okay. And first shifters sleep when? I assume go to bed 10 o'clock, something like that, so he can get up for first shift? Was that your husband's routine?
I guess.
Okay.
I have to ask him.
All right. So you worked third shift, and before you went into work, where were you?
Before I went into work, I was home.
Okay. So you go work third shift,
Correct.
come home, sleep, I assume, or not?
Sleep.
Okay. And then get up, do stuff around the house?
Correct.
Okay. And then go to work?
Yes.
All right. Now, third shift is when? What time does third shift?
9:45 to 5:45.
Okay. In the morning, 5:45 in the morning?
5:45 in the morning,
Okay.
correct.
And when you're in third shift, where's your husband? Where was he when you were working?
When I was working?
Yes, ma'am.
I would hope home.
Okay. So, you're home during the day, then you go to work, but then your husband's home.
Correct,
And you come home at night
yeah,
after your shift, and you're home again during the day.
yes,
Okay. Thank you. You recall testifying at the last occasion that we talked about whether or not you saw tracks from those snowmobile tracks, footprints from those tracks, where the snowmobile tracks were up to your porch and into your home.
yes,
Do you remember that conversation?
yes.
Do you remember what you answered at that time?
I don't know what I answered.
Do you
Well,
remember seeing any footprints from those tracks into your home?
Footprints? No.
Okay. And I also asked you if you noticed any water on the floor, any that might have been left by somebody with wet boots walking through your home.
No, no water.
Did you tell my client where you kept your gun or where you keep your panties?
Yes,
Okay. You told him that.
yes.
You told him you kept them in the
Closet.
closet. Okay. And you told him where you kept your gun?
Yes,
And this was just part of the conversations the two of you were having?
yes,
And I understand at the time that your husband is also a gun owner.
yes,
Okay. Did he have a gun in the home in March 2013?
yes, he did.
Where was that?
Right next to it, mine,
So his gun was right next to yours.
correct.
You testified, and you have the exhibit right here. The exhibit marked 156H.
Yes,
That's where you saw the scratches. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
yes,
Now, they were asking you, Ms. Herringa disappeared in 2013, if I'm correct. Correct? You remember when Ms. Herringa disappeared?
I don't know the date,
Yeah,
exact
maybe about
date.
April 2013, so around
Okay.
there. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Okay. And what date is that dated in terms of when you showed them where the scratches were?
I dated this in 16,
Which month?
9/19/16.
So 3.5 years later?
Yes,
That's when you make that recollection?
yes,
And you were recalling an occasion that happened 3.5 years ago on one night?
on what night was?
Oh, that's my point. You're recalling an occasion that happened 3.5 years later, and you're sure it happened on this one particular night?
No. No,
No, you're not sure, okay. So is it true, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it true that the scratches you noticed, how sure are you that that's the date you noticed them? How sure are you the date you noticed those scratches?
how sure am I the day I noticed the
Yeah,
scratches?
the point that's being made here is the day after Ms. Herringa disappears, you notice those scratches. But you've testified, you don't remember the date Ms. Herringa disappeared, and so the question is, how do you know it was the day after?
I don't.
Okay. Do you have neighbors where you are?
One.
Well, and you see the map, you got the pointer thingy there?
Yeah.
You show us where the neighbors would be? Where are your neighbors?
My neighbor lives right here.
Okay. Thank you. Now, these I apologize for being so indelicate. The panties that you've been pointing out, though you've identified those as being yours.
They are mine.
Is there a reason? Is there an indication on? These are from Victoria's Secrets, I understand. Correct.
Correct.
So my assumption would be that they made a lot of those model panties and sold them around the world, etc. Is there something that's modified about those particular garments that lets you know that they're your particular garments?
No. No modifications on it.
They're the same style, but they're...
Correct.
Okay. Tell me again about the last time you remember seeing the gun.
The last time I seen the gun?
Yes, ma'am.
The weekend of February 22nd, 23rd of 2013.
And after that, what kind of trips did you go on after that?
Pardon me?
After that, you mentioned that you locked the house up and put the gun away when you go on a trip. After that, February 22nd, did you go anywhere?
No. Holidays were over.
Okay. So you put up for the 20, okay. You showed them that last time, and then you put it up, and then you can go on trips where you put the gun away.
No.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Just a couple follow-up, Judge.
Just so I understand this, Nutella, are you telling us that you and your husband's routine was so regimented that at any given time, either one of you were at the house? You understand my question?
No, I
And
don't
let me
understand it.
ask
I'm
this
sorry.
way. No, let me ask it this way. I'm assuming, and you tell me, were there times when neither of you were at the house, neither your husband or yourself? In other words, because of your schedules, whether you were working, I think you mentioned he was in college at the time.
Correct.
Were there time periods when no one was at the house?
Yes. Yeah.
In other words, we're not talking about trips and vacations and anything like that. Just an average day or an average week. Were there times during an average week where neither one of you were at home?
Yes.
And from your recollection of that snowmobile trail, is there an ability to watch your driveway? In other words, watching the to and go of who's coming in and out of your driveway from
Yes.
the snowmobile trail?
Yes.
The neighbor you spoke of, I mean, this map kind of doesn't do it justice, but there seems to be quite a distance between your house and their house. Is that a safe assumption to make?
Yes.
I mean, can you hear what's going on at their house and
No.
vice versa? Can they hear
No.
what's going on at
No.
your house?
Nope.
And obviously, in that first week of March in 2013, you don't know if tracks may have been obliterated. I'm talking about foot tracks, right? You don't know that.
Right.
And you don't know whether or not, if any water was in your house, whether or not it was cleaned up. You don't know.
I have all carpet.
Objection is sustained, the following question is leading. May we rephrase the question?
All right, I'll rephrase the question. Would you have any, well, let me ask it this way. During that week that you were working, March of 2013, you weren't home, obviously, right?
I'm sorry.
You weren't home during that first week of March in 2013, those nights that you were working, you were
No,
not present
I went
at
to
your
work
house.
every night.
And so when you're not present at your house, you have no idea what's happening.
Correct.
All right. You did mention during that time frame that your husband was taking college classes,
Correct.
and I'm assuming that didn't happen during his work hours.
No, it was after work.
After work?
After work.
Okay. And was that one of our local colleges or where
Local
was,
college,
which one?
Muskegon Community.
Okay. And just so I understand, I mean, your address is posted, but you, at the time, you were living in Montague, correct?
Correct.
Northern part of the county.
Correct.
And he was attending classes at MCC, which campus?
Here in Muskegon.
The one off of Coeur d'Alene there?
I believe so.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, complete oversight on my part, and Mr. Johnson kind of asked you that question, but the person we're talking about, Jeff Willis, is he in the courtroom?
Yes, he is.
Could you identify him, please? Point him out and
He
identify him.
is over there in a blue suit and a bright blue tie, striped shirt.
Let the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant. I have nothing else, thank you.
Ma'am, we brought the neighbor a little bit here. Have you ever been to the neighbor's home?
Have I been in it?
Yeah, have you ever been to it?
Not through it, no.
Okay. do you know if the neighbor can see the snowmobile trail from where they're situated?
Yes, we both can.
Okay. During this period of time we're referring to, did the neighbor ever ask you, hey, you saw somebody ride this motorcycle by, or snowmobile by your house or anything? Or did anybody alert you that somebody was riding a snowmobile by your house?
No.
And my final question is, why are you sure this happened? The snowmobile tracks were laid down in March of 2013. Might it have been January?
Why would I know that they were there? Because I could see them.
Well, I know you saw tracks. The question is when. Might that have occurred in January of 2013 as opposed to March of 2013? That's my question.
That would be because if it was done in, I say that again? If it was
I'm
done in
wondering-
January, they'd be covered up by January.
No, I mean, that's what I'm asking you. Why are you sure that you saw the tracks around your house in March of that? Why are you sure about the month? Might you seen that in January of 2013 or February of 2013? How is it you know it's March of 2013? You see the question? You understand the question?
Because, yes, I understand your question now. Because when Mr. Willis would ride in the wintertime around my house, it only happened one time a winter.
Okay, and when was that?
Pardon me?
And when?
And that was in March.
It was always in March?
Always in March.
Every year?
Every year, he takes vacation snowmobiling.
Okay. And thank you. I have my answer. Thank you.
Okay, we done?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And stand down. Next witness.
Judge, you're all set.
I'm good?
Yep, you're all set.
Your Honor, I would, given Ms. Smeltella's testimony, I would move for the admission of 156.
156 is,
The diagram.
No objection, Your Honor.
received.
Your Honor, the people of the state of Michigan call Glenn Mogenberg to the stand.
Your Honor, my apologies, just a housekeeping matter very quickly. The exhibit 138 of the panties, that was the same exhibit that the detective testified he found in the
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, same one.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat. State your name for the record.
Guinevere Mogenberg.
We're still in the morning. Good morning, Ms. Mogen.
Good morning.
Who do you work for?
Herman Miller.
And what are your job responsibilities?
I am a People Services Consulting Manager.
It sounds like a fancy title. You work in human resources, is that?
I do.
Okay, fair enough. Now, as part of your duties, are you responsible for keeping track of employees' time cards?
We do have a system that does track employees' time cards, yes.
And if an individual wishes to take a vacation, do they work through you in order to accommodate that request?
They request through a computerized system, which is then approved by their work team leader.
Okay. So ultimately, are you are you somehow in charge or custodian of all those records?
Our department and our payroll group are, yes.
Okay. So I guess the long and the short of it is, are you someone that has knowledge about how that system works and the time card and vacation process?
I do.
Okay. Well, hold on a second. I'm going to hand you two exhibits here. And just so the jury understands the way your shift system works, in particular third shift, can you describe for them when that work week starts, what time, and when it ends?
Yes. For our third shift, an employee would typically start at 9:45 p.m. And work until 5:45 the next morning. So for a regular Monday through Friday job, that would actually mean starting on a Sunday evening and working through a Friday morning for that full week.
So essentially then, that employee, without taking vacation, would get, if there is, I'm going to talk about no overtime here, but when they get home early that Friday morning, they would have the rest of that Friday essentially off. And then that Saturday, is that accurate?
That's accurate, yes.
Okay, and then come back to work on that Sunday night?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm handing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 157 and 158. Let's start with 157. What are we looking at in that document?
This is a record of Michelle Schnatala Adams' time card for March 3rd, 2013 through March 9th, 2013.
And what does it indicate as far as whether or not she was working or not working that particular week?
Based on this record, it would indicate that she worked typical hours for third shift that full week, Monday through Friday.
Okay. And again, no indication of any extra hours like overtime or anything like that. This was just a regular work week.
I would say it's a regular work week. It does appear that she came in 1 hour early on 4 of the nights.
Okay. But overall, it was the start on Sunday night, end on early Friday morning.
Correct.
The next exhibit, which I believe is 158, what is that?
This is a record for Jeffrey Willis, March 3rd, 2013 through March 9th, 2013.
And what does that record indicate?
This indicates that he missed some time from work and was coded as absent. Specifically on, it would appear Monday the 5th, Tuesday the 6th, and Wednesday the 7th.
Okay. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he did not work those days, his normal shift.
Correct.
Does that mean that he worked the other days?
According to this, and I apologize, these are a little confusing to look at, he did work on his Friday. He clocked in, it would appear like, and worked on his Friday.
Okay. And is that the only day that he worked that week?
He actually did clock in, it appears, Sunday.
Okay.
So he would have worked his Monday and been off on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Gotcha. So 3 days off.
Correct.
All right. And are those records that Herman Miller, in particular your department, normally keeps in its normal course of business?
They are.
And do they appear to be, and let me ask you this, is there anything about those records that looks different than when you first prepared them?
No.
All right. Your Honor, I move for the admission of People's Exhibit 157 and 158.
Morning, Your Honor.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do those documents indicate the reason for missed days? In other words, vacation, sick days, excused or unexcused? Do they show one way or the other?
They simply indicate absence.
Okay, so they don't qualify why the absence occurred.
Correct.
All right, thank you. I have no further objection. I have no further questions, no objections.
Okay. They'll be received as exhibits.
As it relates to Mr. Willis and his time off, I want to fast forward to April 25th and 26th and 27th of 2013. From what you recall in your records, did Mr. Willis work his normal week that week? In other words, start on Sunday, the Sunday before, work until the Friday morning after, and have that Friday, that Saturday, and then come back to work on that Sunday?
Our records indicate that he took a vacation day on Friday, April 26th, so he would not have clocked in Thursday night and worked until Friday morning.
Okay, so your records indicate then, and we're talking about this is April of 2013, correct?
Correct.
So ultimately, he would have worked the Sunday before, the Monday before, the Tuesday before, right?
Correct.
The Wednesday before, and the Thursday before, but would not have come in on Friday night.
He would not have come in Thursday night
To Friday morning.
until Friday morning.
All right. See, I still find a way to screw that up. All right. So essentially, there was a day missing in that work week,
Correct.
and then he took his regular Saturday off and came back to work on that Sunday night.
Correct.
All right. And again, starting his shift at 9:45.
Correct.
Thank you. I have nothing else, Judge.
You told us about my client's absence on March 3rd to the 9th. Do you remember? At least that's the work week that you had testified to. Is there a reason why you brought in that information? Was that what was requested of you? In other words, was that particular date requested of you? Were those dates requested of you to provide information for those dates? Or do you have my client's complete file with you?
Those dates were requested of me.
Okay. So you have the remainder of this file with you?
All of his timekeeping records?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I don't.
And do you have, my guess would be that if a person asks for 6 days off, there's a record kept of that sort of thing, somewhere within the system. Is that an accurate assumption?
It would be kept in the same manner that these are, yes.
Okay. And did you look to see if there was a reason why my client requested those days off?
We don't keep reasons, no.
Okay. But did you look to see if he requested those days off? In other words, did he just not show up, or was this part of a request or a medical leave or a vacation day, that sort of thing?
I believe we did, yes.
You did what?
We did look into how the time off was requested.
And what were if you recall, what were your conclusions?
We didn't have enough information to draw a conclusion.
Okay. So were you able to determine whether or not he just didn't come in, or was there a reason, but you don't know what the reason was?
It appeared that he just did not come in.
Uh-huh.
Initially, it was coded as a leave of absence pending until we had further information, and then at some point it was turned into an absence record.
Okay. What is a leave of absence?
At times, if somebody doesn't show up for work, their work team leader will assume there could be a medical reason or personal reason, and will enter it as a pending leave,
All right.
awaiting further information from the employee.
All right. And thank you. I don't have any further questions.
I have nothing else, Judge.
Okay, you may stand down. And this appears to be a convenient time for us to take our noon-hour break, so we will do that at this time and return at 1:30. Please don't discuss the case with anyone or review any legal events until resume at 1:30.
Those